everyone. Welcome back to my channel. This is Avisha Gulati, and today we will continue with chapter number 2 of Psychology Class 12, Self and Personality. Till now, we have covered what is self, how does the concept of self emerge as a child as you grow up, and what are the different kinds of self, what is personal identity, and what is social identity. We also looked upon the definition of self, which is self refers to the totality of an individual's conscious experiences, ideas, thoughts, and feelings with regard to himself and herself. Right? Today, we will study the different cognitive aspects of self, the behavioral aspects of self, what is personality, and further. So let us get started. So, first of all, what is cognitive aspect of self and what is behavioral aspect of self? First of all, we have learned this in class 11 that cognition means to know or to be aware of something or to acquire some knowledge. And behavior basically means your response to a stimulus, right? So the cognitive and behavioral aspect of self means that what are the different aspects of yourself that you are aware of that they'll help you in getting aware of yourself, or they'll help you in gaining knowledge about yourself, and also that modify or that control your behavior or that influence your behavior. Okay, now we are going to study 4 cognitive and behavioral aspects of self. First is self-esteem, then comes self-concept, then comes self-efficacy, and then comes self-regulation. And an offshoot of self-regulation is self-control. We will look at all of them one by one. So don't need to worry. Now, this is a very interesting chapter and very interesting topic and very easy to understand. Okay. Make sure you mark all the 1 markers that we refer to in your notes, because now your CBSE exam is taking place in an objective format and any question can come. And it is very important that you pay attention to little details, and it is very interesting, so there will be no problem as such. Now, first of all, there is no distinction given in a book, but it's just good to know that self-esteem and self-concept, these two are more towards the cognitive aspects of self, and self-efficacy and self-control are more towards behavioral aspects of self. This is not given in your book, just something extra that it's good to know. Okay. Now, psychologists around the world have always shown interest in the study of self. And a very important line written in NCERT that is often ignored by us is that we cling to our personal and social identities and feel safe in the knowledge that they remain stable in our lifetime. So this is a very important line. Maybe not from examination point of view, but from life point of view, that we often cling to our personal and social identities and feel safe in the knowledge that we know that these identities that we have, they are our own and they will remain stable all throughout our lives. Now, we often perceive ourselves in a way. If I say, I am Disha, I am good in dance, I am great in football. So I am perceiving myself. So the way you perceive yourself, the way you look towards yourself, the image you have of yourself, about your capabilities, your competencies, the way you perceive your abilities and your attributes and your qualities is called self-concept. So self-concept refers to the way we perceive ourselves and the ideas we hold about our capabilities, our competencies. Now, self-concept can be more general and can be specific. Let us understand with the help of example. If I say that I am a very intelligent person, I am a very brilliant student and I have great academic talents. Now, this is a positive self-concept, right? About myself. And if I say I am a good person, this is also a positive self-concept. The difference is that the first one is more specific. I may be great in academics, but I say that I am not good in sports. I'm not good at sports. I don't like football. So in the first example, we're talking about specifics. So at a specific level, you may have a positive view of yourself in one aspect of life. You may like your dancing skills. You may like your cognitive, you may like your academic skills, but you may not like your athletic skills. But at a general level, you have either positive or negative point of view towards yourself. So, self concept at a general level can either be positive or negative. So, general level is very simple. You either have a positive view of yourself or you have a negative view of yourself. Either you have a positive self concept, I am a good human being, I am a good person, or you have a negative self concept, I am not a good person, or I am not worth anything. Specific is that you have positive self concept of certain aspects of yourself and negative self concept of certain aspects of yourself. And specific self concept is more seen in people because we don't say we are bad completely. Maybe we are bad at some things, right? Now, the best way to find out the self concept of a person is to ask him or her. Okay, so this is a 1 mark question, and the best and the most frequent way to find out the self concept of a person is to ask him or her. This might lead to some problems because some people might have a very positive view of themselves, but that might not be a complete reality. But finding about a person's self concept is very difficult. So, a very preferable way is to just ask the person, or maybe ask them to self report their self concept. Okay. So let us move forward to the second aspect of self-esteem. This is a very commonly used word, self-esteem. Self-esteem basically means the value, judgment we attach to ourselves. The value judgment we attach to ourselves is called self-esteem. Some people value themselves a lot. They have a very high self-esteem. And some people do not value themselves and value others perspective more. They also let others insult them. They have a comparatively low self-esteem. So in order to assess the self-esteem of a person, we can do a small exercise. We can give them some phrases, some exercises, some statements, and ask them, do you think they are true for you, or do you think they are not true for you? So some phrases could be, I am good at homework. Do you think this falls true for you? If you say, yes, I'm good at homework, then maybe you have a high self-esteem. If I say, I am not good at homework, then if you agree to it, maybe you have a low self-esteem. I'm highly liked by my peers. So these statements help you to understand the level of self-esteem you have. Okay. And a lot of psychological tests that are based on self-esteem also have such items presented towards you. And on the basis of these items, these tests assess your level of self-esteem. So you can take a lot of self-esteem tests are available. So you can reach out to different psychologists and they can guide you to take these self-esteem tests. Do not Google them because Google most of the time shares wrong or incorrect information that is not helpful to you. Now, studies show that children by the age of 6 to 7 seem to have formed self-esteem in 4 areas. Some children, or most of the children around the age of 6 to 7, I'm really sorry, 6 to 7 seem to have formed self-esteem in 4 areas. First is athletic competence. what is athletic competence? Athletic competence basically means that, or physical competence, both, it has both the names. Physical or athletic competence means I am very fit. I can run easily. I am good at sports. I am physically fit. It is easy for me to win a basketball match. Such are the examples of having high athletic competence. Now, second is academic competence. If a child feels that he or she is good academically, he or she is able to score good marks, he or she is highly liked by his or her teachers, and the child has high academic competence. Then comes social competence. If a person feels that he or she is highly liked by their peers, highly liked by their social group, they fit in well into a social group, then the person has social competence. Then comes physical appearance. Physical appearance is the way you look at yourself in the mirror. Do you feel happy seeing yourself in the mirror? Or do you feel that I am not beautiful enough? The way you perceive yourself in the mirror, the way you perceive your physical appearance, how you look, is physical appearance. So, a person's capacity to view himself or herself is mostly in terms of stable dispositions. In terms of stable terms, we try to view ourselves, and these stable terms help us to evaluate ourselves separately or to make separate evaluations. Let us understand it carefully, what this line means. This is a very important line. So our ability to see ourselves in stable dispositions, to see ourselves in stable traits, that these traits are stable of me, help us combine separate self-evaluations. If I have self-evaluation of that I am a good dancer, this is my first self-evaluation. Second separate self-evaluation is a good singer, I'm good in academics. These separate self-evaluations are combined by a person by their capacity to view these dispositions. A person combines these separate self-evaluations and develops a general psychological image of themselves. Okay? Basically, when you evaluate yourself, when you have different self-concepts and different specific self-concepts, these different specific self-concepts combine to form an overall sense of self-esteem. So these different self-esteems combine to make an overall sense of self-esteem. Okay. Now, another very important point to remember, 1 mark question as well, is that self-esteem has a strong relationship with everyday behavior. For example, if a child has high academic self-esteem, the child feels, I am a good student, I am great in academics, the child will work harder, the child will perform better in school as compared to those who feel that I can't do anything. Now, some children who are highly liked by their peers, who are highly praised or appreciated due to their communication skills, may feel that they have a high social competence. So both self-esteem and our behavior are dependent on each other. If uh, we will have high self-esteem, that will impact our behavior in a positive way. And if our behavior is in a way that is not positive, then it will impact our self-esteem. For example, we are failing continuously at school, or we are not scoring well in our at school, then that will impact our self-esteem. That will make us feel that we are not a good student. That will lead to a low self-esteem. So both are connected to each other. Okay. Now that we learned that both are connected to each other, we should also remember that positive parenting plays a very important role in the development of self-esteem when you are a child. If parents accept you unconditionally and say that you're competent, you're worthwhile, then children are assured that they can make mistakes. And when they are assured that they can make mistakes, this leads to a high self esteem. And warm and positive parenting always helps in developing the self esteem of children. If children are always helped in making their decisions, they are not allowed to make their decisions alone. This will impact their self esteem because they will feel that they are not capable of making decisions. Okay, so warm and positive parenting is very important to develop a high self esteem of a student or a person or a child or anyone. Now, let's come to the third aspect of self efficacy. Okay, let us break the word efficacy. Efficacy is related to the word effective, right? Efficient. How efficient are you? How effective are you in determining your own life's outcomes? Is your life in control of you? Are you in control of whatever happens in your life? For example, let us start with an example. A child comes home and tells that he or she got 40% in his or her exams, and it's not a good score, and he or she says that it is because the teacher made a very strict question paper, and the teacher is very strict and it's not my fault. So here the child is attributing the outcome of the situation on the external factors. The child is not his or it was not in his or her control to score these marks. It is the teacher's fault. The child is putting the blame on others or on situational factors. And another example could be a child comes and says, I got 40%, but perhaps I did not work hard. Perhaps maybe because of some problem that happened with me, I could not work hard, but it is all my fault, whatever happened. So in the first example, you are attributing your life's outcomes towards situational factors. And in the second, you are saying that you have the ability, you are effective or you are efficient to control your life's outcomes. This is called self-efficacy. And the notion of self-efficacy is related to Albert Bandura's social learning theory. So Albert Bandura's social learning theory, or Albert Bandura gave the theory of observational learning. And Bandura felt that young children, when observe their parents blaming things on luck and things on blaming their life outcomes on situational factors, also learn the same. And children seeing that their parents take control of their lives, take control of whatever happens in their lives, and say that their lives outcomes depend on what they do and how they behave, learn differently. So this concept was devised in this way. Okay, now self-efficacy is when a person who has high self-efficacy is a person who believes that he or she has the ability, he or she is effective, efficient enough to behave as per a situation and to control the outcomes of his or her life. Okay, let us just read what is written in the NCERT. The notion of self-efficacy is based on Bandura's social learning theory. Bandura's initial study showed that the children and adults learn behavior by observing others, and people's expectation of mastery or people's expectation of achievement and their ideas about themselves and their effectiveness, these determine how they behave and the amount of risk they take. Also, it is very, very, very important, a one-mark question, and generally important to note that self-efficacy can be developed. Self-efficacy can be developed slowly and steadily. by various strategic methods. And people who have strong and high self-efficacy, these people can influence their life outcomes. They can control what is happening in their lives. They can select and even construct the circumstances of their lives. Also, they are daring, they have courage, because they know whatever they do, they are responsible for their actions. It is not because of external factors what is happening in their life. They are in control of their lives. And this attitude, this aspect of self can be developed slowly and steadily. And a very good example is that people with self-efficacy, high self-efficacy, are so in control of their life that they can stop smoking, stop different bad habits or unhealthy habits the moment they decide so. So, what leads to the development of high self-efficacy? The development of high self-efficacy to contribute in the development of high self-efficacy, society, positive experiences, our parents, they all play a very important role. And especially in the positive, in the formative years of a child's growth, if positive models are presented before a child, this will help in the development of a strong self-efficacy. Okay. Now, let us come to the last but not the least aspect of self, which is self-regulation. Now, what is self-regulation? Self-regulation is basically your ability to organize and monitor your behavior. So basically, your ability to monitor your behavior. This is a behavior, you first monitor it, check it, and then organize in a way that suits your requirements or that suits your situation. So you first monitor your behavior and then you organize your behavior in a way that suits your situation. That is self-regulation. You are regulating yourself. You're regulating your actions, your behaviors, your response to stimuli around your environment. Okay. Now, many situations in life come in a way that they require you to modify your behavior. They require you to show some resistance, to regulate yourself, regulate your behavior. And people who are able to regulate are high on self-regulation. Now, we know that as humans, there are some times that we have to defer our needs or our satisfaction of needs, and we need to control our behavior in the way we want. Why is it important to control your behavior? It is important to control your behavior because certain life circumstances or the situations, the external factors that come in front of you require you to control your behavior. And if you're unable to control your behavior, you are unable to deal with those situations, right? Now, this is commonly called as willpower. The ability to resist, the ability to regulate yourself is called willpower in general layman terms. Okay. Now, what is self-control and how is it different from self-regulation? Self-regulation is a very long-term concept which is focusing on reducing stress, reducing your stressful thoughts, monitoring your behavior, organizing it to cater to different situations in life. So self-regulation is regulating yourself for the good, for your development, and it is a more long-term concept. And self-control means delaying the gratification of your needs. Every person has needs. Some people have biological needs. Every person has different types of needs. For example, biological needs for thirst, food, hunger, and then there comes psychological needs for achievement, need for love, need for development. So there are different needs. Self-control is learning to delay the gratification of these needs. How is your ability? How much can you delay satisfaction of your needs? If you are hungry right now, sitting in your classroom, to how much extent can you delay the satisfaction of your need in order to deal with the current situation that is taking place in your life, or in order to deal with the situation effectively. So self-control is a shorter term concept as compared to self-regulation. That is the difference. But NCERT almost uh, almost shows both of them in very similar terms. So if a one marker question comes to define self-control, then pay attention at its definition. And if a one marker question comes on self-regulation, then pay attention at its definition. That is all. Now, self-control is very important because if you want to fulfill your goals in the longer run, you need to control yourself in the shorter run. I'll give you another example. A person who wants to become rich needs to have self-control. Otherwise, the person who wants to become rich will spend on small items, spend on useless items regularly, and will not be able to accomplish their goals. So in order to accomplish your long-term goals, you need to have self-control, right? And a lot of Indian culture traditions, whether it be Hindu, Muslim, Christian, a lot of Indian traditions have provided us with effective mechanisms of self-control. For example, there comes a vrat, which Hindus keep vrats, which is like fasting, and then comes rosas, which Muslims keep, and even fasting things like non-attachment and detaching yourself from worldly things, meditating, all of these things play a very important role in self-control. Okay. Now, a lot of psychological techniques, and earlier this used to come as a 3-marker question, but now that it is objective, 1-marker questions of each of them can come easily. So there are 3 important techniques of self-control written in your NCERT, and they are very effective. Firstly, if you want to control yourself, you can just instruct yourself and say, Abhisha, you will not eat that burger, you will not eat that bag of chips, and you will control yourself because you want to lose weight. Or for example, if you want to score good marks, you will not watch that TV show, and you will focus. This is called self-instruction. The first way of self-control is self-instruction. Instruct yourself, give yourself commands, and follow them. Now, second is when you give yourself commands, then appreciate yourself, reinforce yourself. For example, if you do not watch that TV show and you study for 2-3 hours, give yourself one chocolate. This is self-reinforcement. Reinforce yourself, reward the behaviors that have positive outcomes. Okay. The third is observe your behavior. Observation cures half of the problems, because if you observe your behavior, you will understand what all aspects need to be controlled. And after you observe your behavior, you can either self-construct and self-reinforce, and you can even do all 3 of them. Okay. So now that we have understood the cognitive and the behavioral aspects of self, now let us understand what is the relationship between our culture and ourselves. What is our culture? Our culture is the beliefs we hold. Our culture is the attitude, the beliefs, the traditions, the art, the literature, everything that is given to us by the society, right? And how is our self-esteem, our self-concept, our image of ourselves, our self-efficacy, our self-control, all of these aspects related to our culture. Now, there are different cultures in the world. Every country has a different culture, but broadly speaking, in our NCERT, we have talked about 2 different cultures. One is the Indian culture, or you can also call it the Asian culture, because Asian culture is very similar to the Indian culture, or actually Indian culture is very similar to the Asian culture. And the second is your Western culture, the culture of US, UK, Canada, all these countries, and Europe, of course. Okay. So let us understand how these two cultures are different from each other, and specifically how is the vision of yourself, how is self, the concept of self, differently perceived and differently formed in these two cultures. So firstly, boundaries. In Western culture, there are specific well-defined boundaries between an individual and the group. If I am an individual, I have strict boundaries. Let me just change this. Okay. If I'm an individual, my boundaries are fixed with the group. The group or the society will not interfere in my personal lives, and my idea of self is different from my idea of being a part of the group. So the boundaries and uh, the boundaries and the walls between the self and others is relatively fixed. On the other hand, in the Indian culture, the view of self is very related, very dissolved in the view of others. So these boundaries are not fixed, and they're relatively shifting. Sometimes self is part of the group, sometimes group comes in, interferes in the self, and this comes and goes here and there. Okay, so the first different or the distinction between Indian and Western culture and their view of self is that the boundaries between self and others, subjective and objective, is fixed in the Western view, and it is shifting in the Indian view. Secondly, the dichotomies. Dichotomies means differences or dualism, either or aspect. So there is specific dichotomy in Western self, in Western views, in Western countries. There is a specific distinction between a person, individual, and a group or others. But in India, there is no specific dichotomy between these two. Okay. Self at a moment expands and fuses with others, with the cosmos, with the environment around it, and in other moment it is completely withdrawn and it is completely focused on the individual level. Whereas Western view seems to hold clear dichotomies between subjective, objective, man and nature, self and others. Okay. In Western cultures, the self and group both are different two identities. Okay. Whereas in Indian cultures, the self and the group all are related to each other, and there is no separate individuality in the two. For example, in Indian societies and Asian cultures, the group plays a very important role in determining the aspects of self. The culture, others play a very important role in the formation of self. Whereas in Western societies, the culture and the society does play a very important role in formation of the self, but the self is separate from the culture. The self has a separate identity from the culture. Okay. Now, D part, term. So basically, term is the basic name of these two types of culture. So Indian cultures, because they see self and they see others as a collective group, they see self and others interrelated to each other as if they are coexisting in harmony. It is called a collectivistic culture. They are viewed collectively. And Western societies, on the other hand, focus on the aspects of self, focus on individuality, individual freedom, individual achievements, individual rights, and there is complete distinction, complete boundaries between the individual and the group, and that is why it is called an individualistic culture. So this is a 1-mark question. Indian culture is collectivistic and Western is individualistic. Now look at these diagrams given in your book. Can you see these two triangles, individual and group? Individuals interact with the group, group interacts with individuals, both influence each other, but these boundaries are sharp and crisp and fixed relatively. Okay. On the other hand, if you look carefully, these are not even straight lines. This is a dotted circle. Why? Because these boundaries between the group and the individual are relatively unstable and they are shifting now and then. Also, look how carefully this is a triangle, which means sharp boundaries, borders, and this is a circle, which means actually no boundaries. Okay, and also this is a dotted circle. So just keep in mind, because if a diagram comes, then you should pay attention to these details, because you won't be asked to draw this diagram because you have an objective exam, but it is good to notice these things. That individual perspective, according to the individual perspective, the self is viewed as a very important part of the group, and the group and the self both are interdependent on each other. Whereas in Western cultures, both group and self are dependent on each other, but the self has more to it than just being a part of the group. Okay. So that is it for today. We will continue with personality and its major theories in the next part of this chapter. So thank you for watching. Do like, share, and subscribe to my channel, and do let me know in the comment section if you have any doubts. And yes, bye.